Well, we've had a lot of good ideas and a lot of discussion why the transmission expansion isn't a good idea, and can actually regular folks stop it. I'm a choir director, a farm girl, and we turned their wills, want to, into would haves, failed, didn't. So my job today is to actually give you some techniques in the two fronts that we actually fought this on. The first and the most powerful, and I'm going backwards, was actually forming a legal alliance all the way across the state of Illinois. We're fighting a private merchant transmission line company. It was not through, it actually would have been almost all in MISO, but its intention was to go into the PJM grid and be sold on the East Coast high-price markets. So all of our farms would not have been, part of it. I am from northern Illinois, an hour south of Rockford, which is where Block Rickle started. They proposed to come across our family farm about 6 years ago, and our route would have been one of 3 routes. And our idea was they tried to divide and conquer, and they wanted us to say our route's not good, but put it on theirs. The whole organization of Block Rickle formed to say this project is wrong, period. A private entity that has nothing to do with our regional grid doesn't have the right of eminent domain. And so therefore, if it's not right for our route, it's not right for anybody's route. So part of the success was starting Block Rickle before they even announced a route. We had raised a lot of money. We had gone all the way across the state of Illinois, the 125 miles there, and we had connected neighbors to neighbors to neighbors to neighbors. And our absolute number one secret weapon was, this is the second iteration of it because we ran out of the first several thousand, and it's the power of the sign. It was an election cycle, it was the summer, and we had one major landowner, our neighbors, who said, I'll buy the first 1,000 signs at about $2 a piece. You can get them really cheap in an election cycle. And he had his farm workers over a couple of counties just hand them out. And it flew across the county, it went to the next county, and within 3 months we had 3,000 signs up across the route. Now, what did it do? Number one, everybody says, who's Block Rickle? What office is he running for? Bush Telegraph, the absolute best weapon we ever had because it kept the company on its toes. They never knew what we were doing because we did everything by Bush Telegraph. Okay, we didn't post it on Facebook, we didn't, have huge meetings to start. But they were all like, so the buzz started going like crazy, and about 2 months later we had our first meeting, and it was huge, and that launched us into a position of power. Now, what did the signs do? We put them like on our farm along the half-mile proposed route. We put them here, here, here. We handed them out to friends and neighbors in town. Other people then, most people didn't even know about the route. So it just kept spreading and spreading and spreading, and we couldn't keep up with it. We ordered the first 1,000, and a month later we ordered 2 more thousand. And I think we ended up with about 10,000 because they spread as the other half of the project in Iowa was announced. We had them ready for Iowa. The same company announced in Missouri. We had them ready for there. They announced Central Illinois. We had it ready. This went to about 8 states. Now, this scared our politicians big time. And so when we walked into the county board meetings, they went, oh, there's thousands of signs up all over. It was a unanimous resolution passed against the company. Unanimous. And about 4 years later, I walked into a board meeting with another group forming, another block group, but this time it was against a transportation company that were calling themselves a railroad and wanted to go around Chicago from Wisconsin through Illinois to Indiana. And I walked in next to the person leading the Grain Belt, the Great Lakes Basin block group, And they couldn't stumble over themselves fast enough to give us the RICO resolution and be ready to pass the new one. It got the attention of press, and it got the attention of people, period. Don't underestimate the power of the signs. In all of the states that have formed these groups later, if they went, oh, the signs are $10 each and you can only take one, and those groups are so much less powerful than what we did. So I will get back to the grassroots and all of the things that worked, but about 3 or 4 months after we formed the grassroots organization across the state, the company went back to the Illinois Commerce Commission because they'd already been kicked out once. They went back to the Commerce Commission and actually filed a route. And it was a day in October, and I'll never forget it, because the list of 500 or so people came out in the state of Illinois, and it was the people who had already united, decided this project was not right. They were the ones that took pages out of the application. We wrote hand letters to everybody on the route. We said, don't worry, we're gonna fight this and we're gonna fight it together. And everybody who did those letters were the people not in shock because it was going through them. It was other people who united to do that. Number one, we always said it could move. Number two, it would set a huge precedent of a private company getting eminent domain. And they tried to call it clean. And you know how many people have said, if they don't answer the questions, they hated the question of, well, what's on the line when the wind doesn't blow? They won't answer it. Gas plants, pipelines, why do you need a 200-foot wide easement from the northwest section of Iowa to run a high voltage DC line to the Chicago area into the PJM grid to be sold to the East Coast? Why do you need a 200-foot wide easement? Pipelines? The ZIFs, the investors in that, are heavy in oil. What else are you going to do with it? They wouldn't answer that. They also wouldn't answer the line loss. You ship it 500 miles, they like to claim that the line loss was actually less in single digits. They have all this single digit stuff. Well, they forgot the double digits at each end to actually convert it and invert it. So it's all smoke and mirrors. And so we really broke through that. And we had teams of people who would write letters to the editor, who any article for their PR stuff that came out, I cleaned that up, BS. Whenever their stuff came out, we had educated, well-researched people who wrote the comments, and we just kept chipping away at it and chipping away at it. So about 3 months after we started the sign campaign and stuff, they actually filed at the Illinois Commerce Commission. And we felt it was very political. Governor Quinn, who had worked with one of their project managers trying to sell it across the state, appointed the Illinois Commerce Commission, all of that. And so we thought, and our route was not chosen. And that morning when they announced the route, our family and another family had hired attorneys to intervene at the Illinois Commerce Commission. Well, the people who were on other routes then called us and said, well, if you're not going to use your attorney, can we have them? Because we want to fight at the... And we said, well, we want to too. And within a day, we had about 100 people that wanted to join on our intervene. And so we had already hired attorneys. We'd been working with them about 8 months. We had decided that we were going to fight the project, period. And that was a new thing. That was, we even had to convince our attorney over about a month and a half that this was even possible. And so we had within a day about 100 people, and because we had already been across the entire state, I knew key people with key testimony, with the biggest farms or the biggest voices, and formed a board of directors literally overnight of people, well-respected people, all the way across the route. And this is really key, because over time and all of the money we spent, they would go to their networks, they would go to their friends, their neighbors, the family, and that was really our way to fundraise all the way across the state. It ended up being a whole lot of money, but it was a lot cheaper than all of us doing it individually. We represented something like 70 to 80% of the route at the Illinois Commerce Commission. I think we represented somewhere around 100,000 acres. We had over 300 members, and we had a seat literally at the table. Illinois Farm Bureau, Illinois Landowners Alliance, ComEd. And it was those three that we defeated. We sort of won at the Illinois Commerce Commission about 3 or 4 years ago. We appealed it to the appellate court because they didn't give them an eminent domain, but they really fudged the law in a lot of places that it wasn't right. They hadn't said it was needed. It was not for reliability purposes. It wasn't the best option. There was no option. They argued they didn't have to give any options. This was a private company deciding they were going to put a line here and they wanted eminent domain to do it. So we appealed it to the appellate court. We won. They appealed it to the Illinois Supreme Court, and we won. It's now back at the Illinois Commerce Commission, where the Illinois Commerce Commission has been. We fought the ICC, and in essence, we took the ICC to appellate court over their ruling. And it's back at the ICC, and they are totally voiding anything and everything they gave to this company. So it's dead. It's dead. That was the real legal oomph to it, and that was absolutely key, but it was supported by a huge grassroots effort. So a lot of the things like countering their PR was huge, just knocked away at our talking points. It was huge. The signs were huge. The educating, I'm a teacher, and I thought I was going to give the first meeting in Mendota, Illinois, one time, and I was going to teach everybody what I knew, and I would be done. Yeah, you're laughing. You just wait. Educating. Oh, blitzes to the elected officials. And if you are a grassroots leader, I actually brought a notebook of what one of our grassroots leaders, I was sort of the leader over all of it, sort of thinking. I lived in the Chicago area. There was another lady who lived in the Mendota area. And at the beginning, she was at that first meeting, and then I heard about her later. She would literally put her mother, suffering from Alzheimer's, and her grandson in the car on afternoons. And while they were napping, she would go door to door to door to door. And as we grew, she and I went across Iowa. By that time, we had actual testimony about what the truth was versus their propaganda. We went across Iowa. They had just come out with this session of marketing to Mayberry, which didn't go over well in Iowa. They quickly formed. Iowa did their grassroots and their legal entity in the same thing. And they were successful too. We thought if we can't stop this project in Illinois, we'll stop it in Iowa. The Iowa Block Rickle Group actually hired lobbyists, and they got a law passed that these merchant transmission lines cannot get eminent domain. Doesn't stop them from building. They're more than welcome to do any of their private business they want. They just can't have eminent domain to do it. So I have those books that Susan prepared. We had tons of handouts. We pre-printed labels to all of our elected representatives so that when people came to a meeting like this, all they had to do was take the labels and put their own letters in and send them in. We did several blitzes on our elected official offices. You call their local office, you call their DC office, and I'd wait about 5 hours and then I'd call. Hi, are you ready now? Like, oh, hi. Very effective. So I've got those things. Do not underestimate, number one, the power of the signs. I've seen it over and over. The groups that have the most signs have the most power. It's talking about numbers, but it's putting a face on the number. They don't have to know that it's your babysitter's mother that has the sign in her yard, right? We have huge families. We have, if you drive down Route 39 and on Route 80, you'll see some semi-trailers with Block Rickel on them. You'll see banners. There's 2 semi-trailers out in Iowa. You know, there's big, huge bales, Block Rickel, Block GBE, all of these. People have been really creative, and it generates a lot of publicity and a lot of good energy. And it's a reminder, do not underestimate the power of social media. We had a very effective social media presence. We had the website that was up here. We had a Facebook page. Does anybody Facebook? All right, out of our 500 landowners, I bet we have less than 5 landowners who actually use Facebook, but it has been one of our most effective tools, period. And it goes right to Twitter. We all know Twitter's for the birds, but the politicians and the media write Twitter. We'd put like our Supreme Court decision on, and I'd have calls from reporters immediately asking for a statement because they've been watching our Twitter feed. So Facebook posts are very effective for short, quick information things, and then we had 3 bloggers. Karen was one from Stop Path. We had another one, Ridiculous Rickel, and there's one from Arkansas, Stop Block Plains in Eastern Arkansas, Polk County or something. It's a big, long name. But there was a whole way of getting the information out, and the blogs were huge. And the most effective advertising is on Facebook. We could do some really effective, in fact, we spent about 3 times what one ad across the state of Illinois. I priced at one point what it would cost to put ads in the papers across our route. We only spent about 3.5 times that on Facebook for the entire campaign over 6 years. It's extremely cost effective, and you don't need to reach your own people, right? You need to educate the public around you. We know why we don't want it, and we can't just be, it was very important to us that we stay away from NIMBY arguments. So we educated about, it's not about wind, it's not efficient, DC voltage, you know, all of those things, so that when we had like the ICC, the Illinois Commerce Commission, came to our town and they talked about, or they asked for public comments, our people did not talk about, well, it will ruin my view, it'll compact the soil. Those things tend to go in one ear and out the other. And at the Illinois Commerce Commission, where there was an individual or 2 that was trying to intervene, they were not major voices at the table. But when we went in representing the majority of the route with over 300 people, we had a voice and we were taken seriously. We did all of the kind of testimony about soil compaction and land evaluation and historic sites. We did all that, but at the same time, we hired expert witnesses that said, if we're going to ship this into PJM, etc., this doesn't work. Okay? I will leave it, but I'm more than happy to answer questions later. Thank you. Wait, one more. Do not underestimate the power of saying they want to, they would like to, etc. Never say they will. Every new group, that is my shtick, is don't say, because you're giving them the power of they will. They want to, and we knew we had won when our landowners started using past tense. And we knew we had won our project when I was at the ICC for another, the sister project, and they were referring, even the company was referring to Rickel as would have, wanted to, and not will. Major. Thank you very much.